So yes, if goal was sending the internet and social media into meltdown, then I think WWE would be just hitting home runs at the minute, because after the title change we had with Code, by putting the title back on Cody Rhodes, and the whole internet went ballistic. We also had another segment here in on this episode of Raw that had kind of like spun social media into like absolute meltdown. Some of it again, like similar with the Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes stuff. A part of it, like I understand. A part of me I empathise with, but yeah, again. I did not hate it nowhere near as much as the internet is making it. Okay, so basically, the internet was trying to make out that this was like the worst segment that WWE has ever done, which it hasn't been for a long shot. So, in case you don't know what I'm talking about here, so basically, this episode of Raw essentially opens with Adam Pearce. He's essentially calling out Seth Rollins for them to kind of have a discussion in the ring about everything that's been going on. This is where we have a whole army of masked men come out, right? And they basically start doing this like little bit of a formation dance, and it's basically almost like similar to kind of like a polytrack, where you have kind of like three cups and you put something under one of them and you move it around and you expect it to kind of follow which one it is. But like the weird thing about this was that they were all masked, right? So we didn't even know, and Adam Pearce didn't know if who was Seth Rollins, or if any of them were Seth Rollins, right? So it all kind of like felt so they were just sort of dancing around, and we didn't really know what it was all kind of like about. It was like, I'm not sure what you're meant to be following here, but it was weird, right? And I could have done without it. Okay, so basically we move on, and we basically find out that there's but the surrounded the ring, and then they go outside the ring. They leave one person remains in the ring, and you guessed it, that was Seth Rollins. So Adam Pearson basically is able to talk to Seth Rollins. He basically says, "Look, you and the masked men, you've been going around, you've been, doing your stuff, and ever since Elimination Chamber." And it's not on, okay? We simply can't have it. Not because it's unruly and it's like absolutely chaotic. No, I would be fine with that. It's just you're taking John. If you're taking down the Vision, well, that's fine by me, because they're a pain in my ass, right? So, but no, the reason stuff why I cannot accept it is because you're not medically clear yet, right? So basically, if during one of these little charades, then your plan goes tits up and the Vision actually get hold of you, they could end your career, right? So basically, it's like, so I'm kind of like pleading with you here to kind of like think about some sort of level of self-preservation here, okay? Because we can't have you out indefinitely, because you are an uber super duper star. So and I think that I think that there's some things to like talk about. So I think that obviously the reaction that Seth Rollins has got since the return, there is all of this momentum in the world to just turn him into a super baby face. I think that people are looking at it kind of like within the real world. They know about his injury, so he's got some kind of like sympathy there. But just in the world of kayfabe here, and maybe I'm kind of like pulling a bit too much stock in kayfabe, because we know obviously WWE do not kind of treat that with any sort of sanctity, but it's sort of like, so maybe this is kind of like on me. But yeah, just in the world of kayfabe, I thought it was a little bit odd that Adam Pearce was trying to be buddy with Seth Rollins, when we know that the whole reason why the Vision are a thing was because Seth Rollins instigated. And if anything, he's kind of like going to be like, look, you made up this faction. You even got Paul Heyman as your kind of wise man. you know what this happens when you make Paul Heyman your wise man. Just check his track record with CM Punk and Brock Lesnar. All of them ended up getting betrayed, okay? But, you cannot align yourself with Paul Heyman and then suddenly be a bit surprised that you end up getting betrayed, okay? So it's kind of like, I feel like it would have made more sense for Adam Pearce to be kind of like this headmaster here, where we'll be kind of like, well, if you mess around with those scallies, then what do you expect, kind of thing. But no, we basically had Adam Pearce kind of like try and be kind of like buddy with Seth Rollins. And then, sure, this was, of course, a cue for Revision to come out, which has now been relegated down to two, just Logan Paul and Austin Theory. So they come out. They're basically like, yes, and the worst case scenario of us getting our hands on Seth Rollins has arrived, because here we are, right? And then this is basically where they do their little dance, but where Seth Rollins puts his mask about and they do their little kind of like formation dance around again to kind of like bamboos. At least this time it made a little bit more sense to kind of thing, because it was all kind of like part and parcel of that. Seth Rollins had assembled this army so that he can kind of like bamboos them and make it escapes. It does give him that little bit of a padding. So yeah, basically they all kind of like disperse, and Logan Paul and Austin Theory are just left in the ring, kind of like seemingly as confused as the rest of us, as much to say like, because they kind of like seem generally perplexed by it all, and we're like, we have no idea what we're doing in the ring now or what we're meant to be doing. When LA Knight comes out, right, and we were basically like, well, I'll give you something to do here, okay, because I got a bone to pick with the two of you, as you know. So here we are. I don't know quite what LA Knight was thinking, because I know that obviously the Vision has taken a massive hit now. They've been relegated quite a bit, but there is still two of them and one of him. So I'm not quite sure what LA Knight's plan here is. So LA Knight is getting beat down when the Usos come out to kind of like help him. So yeah, I mean, look, I thought part of the whole mask men like routine, it made me chuckle, kind of thing. I'm all for a little bit of goofiness. I could support the argument if somebody said well, yeah, the goofy stuff is fine when it's like Danhausen or Mr. Iguana or Truth, but maybe the goofiness is kind of a bit out of place in this sort of thing. And I get it, right? I would have a hard time kind of maybe arguing against that, okay? So yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it, but it was odd, right? There were a lot of weird just stuff, components here that was just weird, right? And so yeah, basically, and in the real world, I know what they're kind of doing. I know why these segments are starting to turn into kind of like a something of nothing kind of segments, because they're essentially just trying to be this holding piece right now, where basically where they're just kind of like waiting, hoping and praying that Bron Breakker makes a miraculous recovery, and so that they can kind of like play that card of Seth Rollins and against Bron Breakker. But yeah, until then, it's all just a little bit kind of like hold in places a bit. So I understand that. So why they're coming off as maybe a little bit kind of something of nothing. I probably kind of like empathizes about these are just real life situations that unfortunately aren't WWE's fault, and so yeah, basically we had a women's qualifying match as well. This was basically we had Lyra Valkyria taking on Io Sky. We had Io Sky picking up a win here. Then we had we basically had Raquel coming out because it was a gauntlet match. Io defeats Raquel, but then Raquel goes totally off on one and completely beats down Io Sky. So it did all of that stuff that where basically you could still build Raquel up to make her look like this scary dominant force. We basically have Raquel essentially kind of like laying waste to Io Sky then for the next contender Ivy now to come out and just pick up a win here. We then had the match Bailey come out, and we had Ivy now and Bailey, and then we had Bailey basically pick up a win here. And like I said, I thought that this qualifying match was was really solid. I just feel like that they yeah, I mean, yeah, basically to kind of when we got this backstage segment with the Usos as well, after they had this opening with the Vision. We had basically we basically had the Usos being asked about last week's promo between CM Punk and Roman Reigns, where basically they were like, what did you make about what CM Punk had said about your uncle? Jay basically comes out and turns around and goes, well, I got nothing to say to Roman, and it's Jimmy who basically turns around and goes, well, actually, maybe we do, maybe we need to have a word with CM Punk, and they go off, right? And I thought oh, that's intriguing. I do think that it's a little bit odd in terms of when you view this segment with how it all kind of plays out at the end of Raw, so which I'll get to. This episode finally saw the implosion of a Judgment Day as well, or at least the start of it, because we had basically Dominic Mysterio come out with Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan. We did do a little bit of seeds as well to kind of like indicate that Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez are going to be the next two dominoes to follow, that they're going to have a little bit of a spat next, which is kind of felt like a long time in coming. That's been teased ever since Liv Morgan's return, so I think it's time to pull the trigger on that as well. But yeah, basically we had Dominic Mysterio coming out basically saying that he wanted the words with Finn Balor after he felt he had cost him his Intercontinental title against Penta. So then Finn Balor comes out accompanied by JD McDonough. Finn Balor is basically like, you're absolutely right, it would, if it wasn't for me, you would still be Intercontinental title, but you keep on saying that you want to be the best, Dom, and to be the best sometimes you have to learn to fight your own battles, and you said that you wanted to do this on your own. Okay, so basically I was just trying to kind of like elevate you, to give you that kind of like bunk up, right? I was trying to give you that tough love of just kind of like making you stand on your own 2 feet type thing. And then he does this like see where he basically turns around and goes, and I've been trying to kind of give you this guidance all of this time, Dom, and the more I try and do it, the more I kind of think maybe your father is right, maybe you're just a spoiled brat. Okay, so obviously Dom cannot stand this, so basically we have Dom basically hit Finn Balor. This basically Finn Balor is able to be in position to turn his back on Dom and then just do the kind of like Pele bicycle kick on him. He starts beating down Dominic Mysterio. He's about to hit Dom with a sling blade when JD McDonough intervenes, and it turns out that they're all kind of against Finn Balor now, so the Judgment Day just basically gang up on Finn Balor and beat him down, and it basically ends with them putting a chair on Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio delivering the frog splash off of the top rope. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it was time. It's been a long time in coming to kind of pull the trigger on the Judgment Day. I've enjoyed the Judgment Day as a faction, but yeah, the time has come to kind of maybe send them off in kind of different directions. It means that we're definitely getting obviously finally getting babyface Finn Balor back. So I'm looking forward to seeing all that. Obviously, going forward, obviously the original play here is that we are going to get Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio feud. I think maybe you could still weave Intercontinental title in that picture. Maybe you could insert Penta into it. I'm not saying that necessarily we need to do that or we should do that, but I think it is still just something on the table there. So yeah, but basically, we finally pulled the trigger on it. Hallelujah. Okay, so talking about Penta, we had basically Penta come out as well, and kind of promo being the new Intercontinental title. He was basically making this defense against the OG Grande Americano, but he ends up having this title defense against the new Grande Americano, because we basically have the OG Grande Americano having this backstage segment with Danhausen. Danhausen is basically like, oh, that's a nice mask, let me see, and the Grande Americano isn't happy, but he's tried to touch his mask, so Danhausen puts a curse on OG Grande Americano, and then that's the last we see of OG Grande Americano, right? We are Penta waiting his match with OG Grande Americano when new Grande Americano comes out. So I just felt like only, so nobody was like, where's OG Grande Americano? And the commentators were basically like, well, maybe it is to do with a Danhausen curse, and I guess it is to do with a Danhausen curse, and it's just it's just part and parcel of what I'm kind of loving about Danhausen at the minute, that it really leans into that goofier side of wrestling, and I think Danhausen just nobody understands his character better than Danhausen, and I just think it just works, right? I just think that it's absolutely wonderful. So we got to the basically, I guess, a main event, although it wasn't a match, it was just a promo. We basically had CM Punk kind of coming out, and we basically had this was interrupted by the Usos, who wanted to speak to CM Punk about his comments last week, and was basically like, look, you crossed the line, you went too far, this isn't about Roman Reigns, this is about our family, and we want you to apologize, right? And we're friends, we get on, so we are going to make it simple for you. All you have to do is say that you're sorry, and we can move on, okay? And basically, like, CM Punk does kind of say that he's sorry, but he says he's sorry that Roman is such a narcissistic, controlling little thing, which he kind of always has been, admittedly. But it was also kind of like, he was basically kind of like saying, I'm sorry that Roman Reigns has you also brainwashed as well. And it was one of his interesting thing where basically he was like accusing Roman Reigns of he was accusing Roman Reigns of being this narcissistic, gaslighted individual who's treated the Usos terribly in the past, which he totally has. But at the same time, he's kind of like, it was interesting as well, because also CM Punk was kind of coming across, although he was accusing Roman of being gaslighted, CM Punk came across as a little bit heelish here as well. He felt a little bit gaslighted as well, because his whole kind of like response could be kind of boiled down to the fact of look, you're upset about what I said, but you're only really upset because Roman has you so brainwashed, kind of thing. So basically he was like, he had basically talked about how Roman had been disrespectful to him, and how Dusty Rhodes, and he had disrespected Cody's father, Dusty Rhodes, as well, and how come he doesn't have to apologize for that? How come it's only him that apologizes? Look, I thought this was a fire promo as well. I wasn't expecting much when CM Punk came out, and we were expecting to see Roman Reigns. I was like, well, this is going to be a bit odd with CM Punk not having anyone to play off. But yeah, I just thought it was brilliant. I really do. I just think it's brilliant that the Usos have been worked into this feud a little bit. I just think it makes it so intriguing going forward. I mean, I'm hoping that at WrestleMania they don't reunite the bloodline. I don't want to see that happen. I think that kind of like run its course. So I'm hoping they don't go down that road. But I am intrigued. Like, I am really intrigued that we basically had the Usos essentially turn on CM Punk here, and yeah. But yeah, going back to what I had said before, what I felt was a little bit odd with that earlier backstage segment in light of this ending promo was we basically in that backstage segment, we, you know, when they were asked about it, Jay was like, well, I got nothing to say to CM Punk. You know, he wasn't seem to ask yet despite, and Jimmy was like going, well, maybe we do have something to say, but yet despite that, it was basically like during this promo, it was Jay who was all heated. Like, Jimmy seemed to be like the calm, collective one here, and it was like Jay who was like all pumped up, and it was like, but before, behind the scenes, like you didn't seem that asked about it. You were like, I don't feel like we even need to address it with CM Punk, right? So it was like, so how did you get so heated here? So it just felt all a bit weird. So but yeah, just to kind of like summarize, I thought that this was a real fireaway too, and it did exactly what I wanted to do. It's made me intrigued for the next episode of Raw and how things develop from here on out. So yeah, it did absolutely what it needs to on the tin. So yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts about this episode of Raw were, and you know, what your own little fan theories are going forward. You know, all that fun stuff. Please let me know down in the comment section. And until next time, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.